Hello everyone, I'm Baruffy1322 and welcome to the first episode of the Stewards Room, where we'll be taking a look at racing incidents submitted by you guys and trying to make a determination on who, if anyone, was at fault. For this first episode, I'd like to introduce you to this article entitled The Rules of Racing, which details all the nuances around what you can and can't do when racing against other drivers in a proper racing scenario. That is, races in which intentional contact or takeouts are not allowed and overtaking has to be done with skill. Basically, proper motorsport. Now, nothing that I've seen in this article has gone against any of my experiences when racing in real life or in games, and it's generally held in high regard as a correct and accurate source of information on this topic. It is basically going to be our Bible to which everything will be referred. I'll leave a link to it in the description of all these videos so you can read through it yourself. I also want to mention here that everything is basically governed by the racing line, which is the line driven around a track to give the quickest lap time. Whilst there may be very minor differences to this line based on car or drivers, the concept of it remains absolute. You're on the outside for corner entry, you come in and hit the apex, then you head to the outside on corner exit. All racing incidents that you see during the course of these videos will probably be the result of one of two things. Two drivers fighting over their right to take the racing line at a certain part of the track, or a driver moving off the racing line in order to attack or defend. If the idea of a racing line is completely alien to you, go check out the Racing School series. I'll leave a link to it down below in the description, which basically serves as the precursor to this whole series. So in this first episode, we've got two clips, and they're basically going to introduce the concept of the racing incident. That is, the incident where nobody is at fault. We don't always have to decide that one person is wholly in the wrong in all of these situations. We can deem something a racing incident, which allows us to say that, okay, this was something that happens in racing. Either both of the drivers could have done something better and neither one is totally to blame, or neither driver could have done anything better and it's just one of those things that happens. And both of these clips, I would say, fall into that idea of them being a racing incident, and we're going to see what that basically means. So here's our first incident, and we're going to play these at different speeds, and we're going to see it multiple times as well. But basically, two cars crash out. Now, what actually happened there? So as you can see, the Jester goes around the outside of the Futo here, comes back across the track, it causes another incident, and yeah, in the notes for this when it was submitted, it was said that the white Futo, which is just ahead of us, right there, was deemed to be at fault for this and was told to wait. So in racing situations, at least in GTA, if you cause an incident, you crash somebody out, you just wait for them and let them get their position back. So the white Futo was deemed to be at fault, but I don't see that to be the case. So let's try and dissect it and see what happened. So this is a multi-class race, which basically means that there are faster cars and slower cars, and then the faster cars do need to get past the slower cars. That's part of the aspect of a multi-class race. So we can see, although the quality isn't the best, we can see that the Jester is trying to overtake the Futo. So the Jester goes around the outside of this corner, and I've actually got some handy pen tools here. So we can see the Jester and the Futo here, and the Jester tries to go around the outside of the Futo to overtake. But what actually happens is that the Futo makes a bit of a mistake and basically either oversteers or understeers, probably a bit of an oversteer moment because the Futo is quite like that. Just a little mistake. These things can happen when you're driving this kind of car, and ends up drifting out wide. You can see him get a little bit of an oversteer moment there, and he starts to drift out wide, and that pushes the Jester out wide as well. Now this, so far, is just a racing incident. The Futo, you can't really put... If you had to put blame on somebody, you would put it on the Futo more than anybody for drifting out wide and making that mistake, but it's not enough to really cast blame or give a penalty or anything like that. It's just one of those things that happens. The Futo drifts out wide as the Jester is trying to overtake, and that's just how it is. So at this point, it's a racing incident, and we've got the Futo that's behind just basically minding his own business. And that's basically what he continues to do. He continues to mind his own business to the point where he goes for an overtake on these two. Now, these two are off the track. They're having their own incident. They're just doing their own thing. And this Futo is just taking the normal racing line. We talked about the racing line. The racing line would be across here like that, cutting from the outside over to the inside. That's just the normal racing line. So this Futo is just doing his thing. Doesn't really have to worry about anything. Obviously trying to avoid what's happening here. But then what happens is that this Futo, whether it's because the Jester hits it or he just comes onto the track in this way, he veers over to this side. And what that does is it causes a collision between the two Futos. And then because of this collision, the second Futo, the one that was originally in the incident, then comes back across the track and hits the Jester. Both of those crash out, and then obviously the Massacro that we're seeing the footage from that isn't involved in the incident. This is an incident that happens all in front, but I don't see how you could ever give any kind of fault to the white Futo. He was minding his own business there. They were having their own incident, the Futo and the Jester. It was just a racing incident, no one really at fault. They just drifted wide, that's what it is. But then the way that they come back onto the track, it was the way that they came back onto the track that actually caused this crash in the first place. It wasn't the white car doing anything out of the ordinary. He was just taking his racing line. And when you come off the track, or you have a crash, or you end up off the road, you have to, it's on you, it's on your responsibility to rejoin the track in a safe way. And that didn't happen. Again, you can't really put a crazy amount of fault on any one particular person. It was a combination of different factors that caused all this to happen. But it's essentially a racing incident. Stuff like this can happen in racing. That's what happened. Nobody's really at fault. It's just one of those things. And I really, really disagree with the whole idea that the white Futo, which made no movements to take out any of these, he was just taking his racing line. I really can't understand how he would even be considered to be at fault for that. Obviously, you guys can let me know down below in the comments if you disagree, or if you agree as well. That's what this is all about. But on my end, and based on all the things that mentioned in the rules of racing, this would just be considered a racing incident, something that just happens. Nobody's really wholly at fault, and it's just one of those things. You wouldn't really penalise anybody for something like that. So the next clip that we've got has a lot to unpack, and I'm not going to go into every specific incident in particular, but it's kind of focusing on the idea that you can't always trust what you see. And I've tried to make this first episode a bit of a setup for the future episodes to give us a bit better understanding as we go into them. First, with the idea that a racing incident is a thing and nobody has to be at fault for something. And also, we are racing online. This is online racing, and internet connections are different. You can't necessarily always trust what you see on the screen. And that's what this example is going to show, perfectly well. And it just something to always keep in mind when we come to watching future episodes. So this race is very hectic. We've got multiple positions, multiple perspectives of this, lots of different issues going on. But then this is where it all comes to a head. The white car gets absolutely destroyed, as you can see there. And what on earth happened? So let's try and unpack this. From the very start of the race, and it's always the start of a race that can cause the most incidents because everybody's so close together. You have to show a little bit more caution at the start of a race if you want to race cleanly. And that's mostly shown here from most people, but there are some issues. So first of all, we can see here that the white car is basically in the top right. If you focus on the top right here, the white car takes out the blue car. You can see it on the screen here as well from both perspectives. As we can see here from the rules of racing, when you're the attacking driver going up the inside of a car, you have to be more than halfway along the inside of the car that you're trying to overtake. So if you're more than halfway along the inside, the defender should know that you're there and give you the space on the inside of the corner. If you're less than halfway alongside, then it's your fault if a crash happens. If you're approximately halfway alongside, then it's about equal blame. So if we look back at this now, you can see that the white car isn't really halfway alongside the blue car. And if we just scroll it back a little bit, coming into a fast corner like this, especially when you look in the bottom left, you can see that from the perspective of the blue car, he's nowhere near alongside. It's a very fast corner anyway. It's not the kind of corner that you can really go for an overtake like this. And this was always going to happen because the momentum and the racing line carries you around this way quite quickly. You can't really affect an overtake in this area. So the white car is at fault for this first incident. That's not the main incident that we're talking about in this video as well, but I want to just kind of unpack this as much as possible. So the white car is at fault and he realizes that he's at fault, and later on across the lap he decides to wait and pull over, which is fair enough. That's what, when you realize you're at fault, you just pull over to give the position back and then no penalty. But then the major incident comes after all this has happened. So the white car, as you can see, is off the track waiting after realizing that he's taken out the blue car. And we've got basically a coming together because of lag and not being able to see exactly what's going on. So as you can see here, we've got this yellow car in the bottom left, which is the one that we just had the incident with as the blue car, kind of comes in at a pretty steep angle here. Now, when you look at the position of all of these cars, they're all in, well, some of them are in slightly different positions. From the perspective of the yellow car here, the blue car is much closer to the outside of the track than where he is on his screen. You can see there's quite a big distance there to the outside of the track, whereas from this perspective, from the yellow car's perspective, he's much further out of the track. So when the yellow car is making his turn, he comes and hits the blue car on the blue car's screen. As you can see here, this is the point of contact right now. They've made contact right there, but from the yellow car's perspective, they're miles apart. From the white car's perspective that's down here, you can see that there is a significant gap between them from his perspective too. So the crash only happens on this screen, on the screen from the blue car. But then what happens because of that crash is that the blue car gets hit, goes out wide, whilst the white car is also slightly at fault for this because he's waiting to give the position back to the blue car, but he should be waiting off the track really. He shouldn't be coming back onto the track when there's people, racing over here. So he's somewhat at fault for the position that he's in. But when you see what happens, obviously the blue car is hit by the yellow car, the blue car hits the white car, and then the white car flies into oblivion. So again, this is another thing where a lot of drivers here could have done something differently. A lot of drivers could have done something better. It falls mainly under the idea of a racing incident. But when it comes to lag in racing, you always have to be, basically the rule that we have when we're racing properly is that you're responsible for your lag as much as you are for your behavior on the racetrack. So if your lag takes somebody out and it doesn't happen on your screen, then that is your fault. You still would have to wait for a lag takeout, even though it didn't happen on your screen. That's just how it is. But we also have to take into account who is the person who is lagging. Is it the yellow car? Did the yellow car lag into the blue car? Or was the blue car lagging and in a different position than what he actually was? So when you actually look at it, and the benefit of having a third person looking at this from the perspective down here is going to be very, very telling. That's what's going to allow us to fix this. The lag is coming from the blue car. So you can see again his position here is further to the right than what it is on the blue car screen. Like I said, there's this gap between the car and the outside of the track. But the blue car is essentially, his internet is making him appear like he is further back than what he actually is. So you can see that from the third perspective down in this bottom right, the blue car is right on the edge of the track. So he's right on the edge of the track there. He's right on the edge of the track up here as well. Only on his screen is he not on the edge of the track. And what that means is that his essentially his internet is lagging behind where he actually is in game. And if you look at the position of the yellow car in all of these instances, you can see that the yellow car, being the car in the top right, is in pretty much the same position on all of these screens. Little bit of distance here, as you can see, a little bit of distance here, a little bit of distance here. The yellow car isn't the one that is out of position in comparison to where he is. The difference comes from the position that the blue car is in on his screen and the position that he is on everybody else's screen. So again, if you're saying that you have to be responsible for your own lag, it's the blue car's lag that is causing all of this. But again, this is another one of those racing incidents, because something like this, it's not really something that anybody could have avoided. Everybody could have done something a little bit better. The white car could have not come back onto the track that early, and it wouldn't have, this would have just been a little hit and everybody would have continued. The yellow car could have not been as aggressive onto the blue car. The blue car is obviously responsible for his own lag as well. So everybody has a part to play in this accident, apart from obviously the guy down here who's just basically showing us what happened. And it's really good to have this multiple view, a separate third view from this. But again, it's not that anyone is wholly at fault. You would just put this down to a racing incident, and I would say that nobody should be penalised for anything that we've seen here. It's just one of those things that happens, and it brings to the fore the idea that you can't necessarily trust everything that you're seeing on the screen. If you think someone's taking you out, it might be a bit of lag causing that, and it's better to have multiple perspectives of something to be able to make an informed decision. So that's something that we need to keep in mind for the rest of this series, to make sure that we are looking at these things objectively and properly, and getting the full picture of what happened, because it's not always 100% clear just from any one particular situation. And that's going to do us for this first episode, which I basically just wanted to use as more of a scene setting episode to go over some basics before we, get into the meat of it properly. We do have a lot of submissions to go over across a wide variety of games, which is absolutely fantastic. Thank you guys for submitting those. And if you have any racing incidents or clips that you want to be featured during this, or you want me to look over, you can submit them on the form that's linked in the description and in the pinned comment. Now, of course, this is always a discussion as well, so I'd like you guys to give your thoughts in the comments of this video, what you think, whether you think these are racing incidents. I may try and bring in, if there's a specifically an interesting clip that I can't really make a decision on whose fault was that or whatever, something like that. I might start bringing in some straw polls so you guys can vote on which one you think is at fault, or whether you think my interpretation of it is correct. Let me know if you'd like to see something like that as well. But for now, this has been the first episode. Hopefully it's been enjoyable, and there's plenty more to come with this, plenty more clips to look over. And as always, feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.